You are listening to the F11 Photography Podcast.
To the chasers of light, to the purveyors of pictures, to all of you listening from around the world, this is the F11 Photography Podcast. I am your host, Kevin Deal, and frantically texting on his phone, your other host, Mr. Brandon Gorrie. Hit send.
Hi, I'm frantically texting on my phone. No, I'm actually I'm posting a story on Instagram about our episode today. It's a really exciting episode today. It's been a year. It has been a year and some change, I think, of this podcast. The time has really flown, and so I'm really, really stoked to do our year recap today.
Absolutely. And so we are on episode number 49. So we didn't quite keep pace with one a week this year because, hey, we are working professionals with lives, but to put out 49 podcasts in a year and perhaps 50, because if this one goes a little long, we may break it up into 2 episodes because there's quite a bit to talk about in our year-end review, because we are going to talk about the end of 2023 and what we're going to do in 2024. And I have a feeling that that is going to take a lot of time to talk about. So I think we are definitely going to start focusing on this year. And then if I look at the watch and I'm like, oh, so we've used an hour up, then we will move on to a second episode where we talk about what we're going to do in 2024. So how you been?
Well, I think we're all feeling the busyness of the holiday season, and I think everyone's got their side hustles, and it's just that season where you're balancing family with side hustle, with travel, with your main gig. Assignments and work is getting moved around during the weeks. It's such a busy time. Shoots are being moved around. We're scheduling around people's vacation time. It's fast. It's lovely. Bing Crosby's in the background. It's such a wonderful time of year, and I can't wait to get into the 2023 that we've all experienced.
Quick note on Bing Crosby. Did you know that he used to beat the shit out of his children with a bag of oranges so they wouldn't leave a bruise?
That's really, really good information.
Yes. As a matter of fact, my brother-in-law went to Gonzaga University in Spokane, Washington, and they actually have a statue of Bing Crosby up there, and I think somebody hung a bag of oranges because he's crooning with his hand out, and I think somebody hung a bag of oranges up there. So I thought that was a cool side note about Bing Crosby. But hey,
well, Gandhi slept with his niece. We can't all win.
We live in a cancel culture, and it's like, hey, you're a piece of shit, but you did sing very well, so thank you for crooning for me. Good job. We can't, if we go retroactively and have to cancel everybody, we won't have a lot of good music because most of my heroes are dicks. So.
Oh man, it's working in the YouTube field as I do. I do have to say that the whole censorship culture is just, it's so blown out of proportion. And I find it tough because I have I majored in Russian studies. I studied socialism for my degree. So it's like...
So you know all about propaganda and censorship.
Yeah. It's like...
You want a free mind?
Yeah.
And a free opinion? No, thank you.
Absolutely not.
Now go stand in line for bread
you
against this 3,000 PSI wall.
Yeah.
Concrete.
It's tough being in the middle ground because it's like you're either full Andrew Tate or you're full you can't say that, and you just have to shut up and listen to the government. So it's interesting.
Absolutely. Well, I'm not feeling the pressure of the holidays because I only have one thing left to do. I have purchased presents for everybody. I have spent 0.0 seconds in any retail stores. I did everything completely online. Amazon has finally gotten their shit together. I mean, they've had their shit together for quite a few years, but I used to work in retail, and it would be like, oh, are we going to stay open on Thanksgiving? Like that was like the conversation about 10 years ago, because Amazon existed, but Amazon did not have their distribution network taken care of. And, you can tell me that I'm evil and that I'm supporting billionaires and all that, and that's totally fine. You have the rights to believe that, and I am not right or wrong, and neither are you. That's just how opinions work. But I'm a working professional. I'm super busy. And so the convenience of just clicking on something and sometimes having it there that very afternoon is appealing to me. And maybe Bezos does have dead skeletons in his closet. I don't know, because I'm too busy, being more efficient as a human being, because I don't have to get in a car and drive through traffic. I mean, I made the mistake 2 Saturdays ago. I needed to go somewhere. I think I was just like I'll meet a model downtown to shoot him or something, because 10 a.m. is not that busy. Well, getting to the highway, because of all the people out there shopping, it was insanely busy. And that was my first reminder of, oh yeah, I'm going to take care of everything from my computer this year. Fuck y'all.
I did the same exact thing. It's just review surfing, because to your point, who has the time to drive and sit through traffic and just throw on hours to their day just to get a gift? You know what I mean?
Well, and unfortunately, the mom and pop stores, for the most part, have all been put out of business. Sorry. But it just, the whole retail model doesn't work anymore. And so, as we've gone to a more remote world, people are doing things more remotely now, and that includes ordering your damn gifts. So
I also do think, I think for people who have we're starting this recap really, really business and capitalism forward. I think the masses will order stuff on Amazon. I think they do, and I think they enjoy it. I also think there's such a thing as retail therapy, and a lot of people will spend money they don't have just as a form of therapy. I don't think you and I really do that. I think we're just like, okay, I don't have time to go to this thing. I need this piece of equipment. It's on Amazon. It's well reviewed. Boom, done. I'll see it in 2 days.
Yeah, I buy with intention for sure. So, before we get into our sponsor and get into the point of the episode, I want to tell a story. So I have my physical every year, and you're supposed to have a physical. Don't worry, I'm fine. No, this is a great story. So when I was about your age, I went to go get my physical done, and I like, oh yeah, you have to fast. I'm like, okay, cool. I fasted, and I went in, and they have to draw blood, and the nurse, it took her 4 or 5 tries to find my vein, and I got lightheaded, and she's like, oh yeah, just bend over, put your head between your legs. Here's some crackers. And all. So anyway, I had a really terrible experience. So from that point onward, I was like, okay, I know that not all nurses suck this bad at finding veins, but from here on out, I'm going to start bringing a granola bar or crackers with me when I go do my physical. So afterwards, because I have not eaten in roughly 10 hours, 12 hours. It's supposed to be 8, but I stop eating at 8 or 9 p.m. at the latest. And then I sleep all night and then have a physical at 8 in the morning. So it's probably almost 12 hours since I have eaten. And so anyway, so I go into my physical, I have a clean bill of health, and I'm good to go. But immediately after that physical, I had a shoot here. And so I was like, well, I'll just eat in the car. And so I'm eating my granola bar. Everything's good. I'm driving, whatever. It's cold outside. I have my heated seats going. I'm in a happy place. I get here. I get out of my seat, and I look down at my seat. Now, my interior is light. It's very light beige and white. And there's a brown streak on my seat. And I'm just like, the first thing you do is you panic. You're like, did I just shit myself? Because I did just have a physical. I would have known if I had shit myself. And then, I do what anybody would naturally do. I bend over and I smell it, and it's fucking chocolate. It was a fucking chocolate, a piece of chocolate, like a chocolate chip fell out of my granola bar, fell down under my ass with my heated seats pressed against my ass and melted and streaked across my interior. Now I'm like, oh, that sucks. No problem. I can clean it. And I'm like, oh, wait, if it's on the chair, it's on my ass. So, I was the only person here at the studio. I walked into the bathroom and I dropped my trousers and I hand wiped them out in the sink. And so, yeah, that's just my story that I wanted to tell because somebody needed to hear it.
I think it's funny how we're talking about like time efficiency and spending and everything, but it sounds like you spent a good like 15 to 20, maybe even 30 minutes just like handling this one chocolate chip that decided to lodge its way into your ass.
It only took me about 5 minutes. Like it took me about 2 minutes.
5 minutes, bro.
It took me 2 minutes to figure out what the fuck was going on. And then it took me like another 3 minutes just to hand scrub it. It wasn't that bad. Like I just took a little bit of soap, a little hand soap, and just and then like there was 30 minutes between then and when the person showed up. So I knew the model really well, and I was just like, hey, everything looked okay. I told her the story first, and I was like, everything looked dry back there. She's like, yeah. I'm like, cool. Then the stylist showed up, and
I'll tell you what. Interesting take on phlebotomists, people who draw blood, is they don't actually get training. Did you know that? They hold on. They get one like shadow of another nurse drawing blood, and then the nurse pulls them aside and says, hey, like all you're looking for is you kind of just isolate the vein, and you'll feel the pressure of when you get inside the vein, there'll be a little release, and that's it. So they don't actually have any like training or anything. They just shadow once, and then they're sent to their first patient with no one else there. So
fun.
I think that's just like the budget that we have for phlebotomy.
Awesome. Well, that was my story that I wanted to share with all of you. Coming up, we are going to start the episode. We're going to reflect back on 2023. Harness the power of artificial intelligence with Luminar Neo. Artificial intelligence is the buzzword in the photography industry right now. It's becoming so widely used in our industry, it's hard to tell when it's hype and when it's actually an effective tool. Luminar Neo actually uses AI for good by giving you easy-to-use modules that are powerful and improve your photography. And now they're happy to announce the introduction of Generace, which is their generative AI fill. What is Generace? It's a smart personal assistant that will help you remove unwanted distractions from your image. Unlike a standard erase tool, it leverages the power of AI to fill the gaps with textures and other elements to match the surrounding area. You'll easily get realistic results because Generace is analyzing your photographs to make sure that the results look realistic, mimicking patterns and objects that it sees. In addition to other powerful modules like relight, power line removal, and AI masking, Luminar Neo is on the cutting edge of artificial intelligence, but it's not just a plugin for Photoshop. You can actually use it as a standalone program with a catalog organizer and all that. It also has presets. Use the code Kevin10 at checkout or check out the link in this podcast to get 10% off your copy of Luminar Neo today.
This is Jason Berkman, and you're listening to the F11 Photography Podcast.
All right. Thank you for listening to our sponsor. They help this show grow. So, the subject of today, we are going to reflect back on 2023. We're going to talk about some of the things that we did that we were happy about in 2023. We're going to reflect on some of the things that we wish we had done better in 2023. So, I'll start with mine so Brandon can talk later and think. Sometimes he just feeds off me and reacts, and that's fine.
That's great, Kevin. All right.
So in 2022, I started a YouTube channel, and your first year of starting a YouTube channel, you're really just thinking of, hey, how do I even start a YouTube channel? What am I even doing? You got to figure out your head from your ass, and that's really what I did in my first year in YouTube. And you go to the path of least resistance. And so for me, that was, of course, Canon, because I am a primary Canon shooter. That's debatable these days because I'm about 50 Canon, 50 Fuji. But I've used Canon for 2 decades. So it was something I could easily talk about with enthusiasm. And really all selling people is the transfer of enthusiasm. So I said, hey, if I'm going to start a YouTube channel, I'm going to start it around Canon products and film as well. So that was what I did the first year. And by the time that first year was done, I was confident also enough with Fuji. And so I decided, hey, I'm going to do a bunch of Fuji episodes in 2023. And that was my resolution. And I totally met and exceeded that to the point where my followers on my YouTube channel who were Canon people were like, dude, when are you going to do a Canon episode? And so that's what led me to buy a couple cameras recently so I could review those. I actually had real reasons to buy them, but when I buy equipment, I just make sure I do reviews on it. So now in year 2 of my YouTube channel, I feel like I have hit another level, and now it's kind of like what I've been working on for 2023 was, okay, now I need to figure out like the formula of my show, my episodes, and I need to figure out how I'm going to make that work, because I went from 0 followers, 0 subscribers in January of 2022. And in the next day or two, I'm about to hit 5,000. So, in a couple years, I hit 5,000 subscribers, completely organic. I don't go around and buy followers, subscribers. I think that's all bullshit. And it's starting to snowball. I would not be shocked if by this point next year, I'm going to have 20,000. It's growing pretty fast. And so, my big goal is to get to 100,000 subscribers, because I think when I get to that point, I can then have the budget to have a actual full-time videographer, because I did a shoot up in Dallas last week, and a fan of my show was just like, hey, if you're going to be in Dallas, like, I'm a professional videographer. I can, do some gimbal work for you and follow you around and make it look all professional. And of course I told him like, hey, I don't have a budget to pay you. He's like, no, I just want to do it for fun because I'm a fan. I was like, okay, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. And I mean, all the footage looks awesome. Like, I'm like, God, I look like a real channel, because usually I set up a tripod static and then I shoot that. And then if I'm in the studio, I'll shoot a model. And then when I'm done shooting the model, I'm like, hey, I'm going to do a couple like flybys where I'm going to like walk up to you. So just pretend you're posing. And then I'll like hold my trigger and like hit flashes with my trigger with my left hand to make it look like I'm taking pictures of them to try to get that perspective.
Oh yeah.
And so not having a videographer, just like, I think that's the next step I need to take in my channel. And so I guess we're talking about things that we're proud of that we did in 2023. And I'm proud of where my YouTube channel has come from and where it's going. I feel like it has an established tone to it, because I'm not taking pictures of charts. I take my time to do reviews right, in my opinion. So like I did my R8 review. I just got a Canon R8 and I did my review of it, but I actually go out and do real world testing on it. It's like, here's how this works for wildlife. And then I go get a wildlife lens and I go shoot wildlife on it. And, it's very much borrowing from the playbook of Jared Pullen. He doesn't take pictures of charts either, but I think that that's the way to do it, because who gives a shit what corner sharpness looks like at f8 if it's not a good looking lens, But I left Brandon hanging. I'm like, I'm done talking. And Brandon's like, I got nothing.
No, you left me hanging with corner charts.
Like corner sharpness, bro. Well, you can identify with that. You're not a technical guy. You're just what's the vibe it's given me?
I'm not a technical guy, and it's funny. Is part of me, I'm so subject heavy. I'm so what's in frame heavy. I'm so composition heavy that if I'm using a $50 lens and the corner sharpness is just chromatically aberrated and destroyed, I'm very okay with that. It's kind of just like, man, like I almost feel like I should care more about that. I feel this like weird pressure of like it's almost like my perfectionism isn't turned on in that regard. It is in other places, but I was just like, I want my perfectionism to kind of like spread into that area, because like I want to deliver a great product for myself and for that version of myself that cares about this kind of thing.
The YouTube channel is my accomplishment, one of my accomplishments that I'm super happy about that I did in 2023. So I'm going to kick it over to you. And it doesn't have to even be photography related, even though this is a photography podcast. What did you do in 2023 that you're going to look back on and go, I'm happy I did that. I feel like I grew as a person or a photographer / videographer.
Yeah, 2023 was really interesting. It kind of starts with 2022. I went through 2022 doing a lot of heavy experimentation. Like that's where I kind of grew, and there was a lot more failure in 2022. And going into 2023, I was thinking like, okay, I want to ease away from this, this level of failure. I kind of wanted it to be a little more comfortable. I felt very confident in my ability to execute like technically and compositionally accurate and interesting photos. And I think it gave me a sort of complacency. Now, I'm very happy about the work I executed. 2023 was very much a black and white sort of season for me, and I feel very confident in my black and white work, and I was very happy to explore that area. And my favorite thing about 2023 is during the second half, the thing I liked most, and this isn't very conventional, is I liked how much I began to dislike black and white for the sake of itself. I think black and white tells a great story. I think black and white has a time and place. It is absolutely beautiful. Hell, I see in black and white. That's how I take my photos. That's how I structure my shots, is because you see the shapes and the geometry and the composition, and it lends itself to black and white over color. And by the end of 2023, the last couple months, I've kind of taken a breather from the black and white, because it's just like, it's not that I've conquered the genre. It's more so that I want to do more. I felt like I just dug myself into a bit of a niche there, and I want to explore more. So from 2022 being the experimentation, putting more personal projects and sort of out there prop heavy, set design heavy projects, I kind of eased into, okay, how can I refine a subject in black and white with light? And I did that. I think I did that really well in 2023.
Yeah, I identify with you on the black and white color thing. I'm like you. I tend to default to black and white, and I challenged myself recently. I did a shoot on Lake Travis with this model who had this really banging white blondish hair, and we did a sunrise shoot. We all got there at 6:30 a.m. and like as soon as the sun came up, everything was so damn colorful. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna abandon my plans to shoot this in black and white. There were a couple shots that worked in black and white, but I had my Fuji XH2 and I just banged all that shit out in classic chrome, which is kind of a Kodachrome emulation. And I mean, there were some bangers in that set, man. And like the blues and the oranges were just off the damn charts. Yeah, I mean, it was a killer set. So the XH2 color, that was the way to go for sure for that set. But it taught me that I originally was going to do everything in black and white, and was just like immediately like, nope, I'm going to do everything in color. And I'm glad I did everything in color in that set, because I thought that the colors popped really well. Thanks to global warming for the first time, like ever. But I guess not true. It's like 2 or 3 years straight now. The trees in Austin actually have seasons now. They never used to do that. They would just have, they're alive or they're dead. Now it's like, oh wow, they're starting to turn orange and red. So thank you. Everyone treats it like it's a bad thing. It makes for great photography. So thank you, increasing temperature of the earth.
Yeah, sometimes the stuff that's gaudy in cities and in locations, and even just gaudy weather that we're not expecting, it's a godsend for photographers. What was really interesting is you convinced me when we started this podcast to switch from Lightroom Classic and Photoshop over to Capture One, and you said this is going to help your color thing, because the whole my shying away from color, you've known about that. We've talked about this in the past year, even beforehand, and that was kind of a goal of mine upon using Capture One and learning the workflow. And I have to say that it has helped me and nudged me towards color grading. And I don't want to shy away from color. Rather, I want to have a lot of intention with color. I do struggle with color. It's not my favorite thing. However, like when it's done well, I want that to shine through. And something that I don't like, that I don't find interesting, is a standalone color grade. Like if I'm going to do a photo, like I know teal and orange looks good. Like that's a winner and it's easy to get away with. But I also I can't stand how binary it is, because when you start using the RGB channels in Lightroom Classic, which is what everyone uses, you start changing the levels in the actual channels themselves. You find it very easy to suddenly mesh colors that are distinct from one another and change them into more of a grade without actually mapping color on top of the image. Rather, you're changing the intrinsic values of the colors in the image itself. So that's a huge difference. And I want to move away from that and start intentionally making my shoots and lighting my color and balancing the colors on the sets so that I don't have to grade, because I don't want to grade. I really don't want to grade in post, because it's obvious, the grade becomes the shoot, it becomes the look, it becomes the inflection. And so something I'm looking forward to is putting together shoots where those colors are already there. Those shades of green, shades of yellow, shades of blue, whatever they are already intentional in the shot, and I just have to play around with lighting more.
Classic chrome on Fuji. I put it in classic chrome. I'm like, that's the way I want to see the Earth.
And yeah, I mean, fair enough. I want to see the Earth in Portrait 400 or Cine Still.
Well, it's interesting you say that because like I've heard people shit on film simulations, but a lot of these people are film photographers who specifically seek out film stocks for a reason. It's like, it's no different. Like you're seeking, I mean, I'm not talking about the light hitting the emulsion. I'm talking about the color aspect of it. It's like, I seek out Portrait 400 for the very same reasons that I seek out certain Fujifilm film simulations.
You've probably seen the same as me, where someone will go and shoot a sunset on Portrait 400. They'll shoot it at 200, get it processed at 320 ISO. And then what they'll do is they'll take all the yellows out of the film and make it like a Fuji, like high pastel look. To where it's not even portrait anymore. It's like, why, like they're using portrait not for its look, they're using it for its latitude and its flexibility, I guess.
Hey, it's a tool. So another thing that I'm happy about in 2023 comes off the heels of something that you brought up in our last episode, which was shooting with less megapixels. So as everybody knows who listens to this pod, I have a 100 megapixel camera and I have a 45 and a 40 megapixel camera. But I decided to do a static shot. I bought a Canon R50. It's just a crop sensor, something you probably get at Costco. And when I buy new products, I, of course, want to do reviews of them because it gives me good content for YouTube. And so I took the Canon EOS R50, which is the second cheapest mirrorless camera that Canon makes. The only reason I didn't get the R100 is because it doesn't have the flippy screen, and there's a bunch of stupid things that, like, you can't. I don't even think you can shoot it manual. So I'm like, no, that's too stripped down for me. So I went one tier above and got the R50, which is the replacement for the M50, and it's tiny. And I decided to challenge myself since I was doing the review, and I left all my expensive cameras and I left all my expensive lenses at home. I didn't even shoot in RAW. I took the R50. I took my 50 millimeter 1.8, the nifty 50 lens that I got refurbished from Canon for like $90. And then I took this picture of this badass model named Gabby. It's on my Instagram. I took this shot with their second cheapest camera, their cheapest 50 millimeter lens, JPEG, straight out of camera. And when you look at the shots, people go, oh, wow, you probably use like a $5,000, $6,000 setup on it. And I did not use a $5,000 or $6,000 setup on it. All I did was I just retouched out a couple dead skin cells because every human being has them. Outside of that, it is straight out of camera. And I just got to say that if you, in the year 2023, buy any new camera and think that you need something insanely good to take a good picture, you don't. And I'll leave a link in the description of this pod to the exact picture I am describing to you now. And of course, come 2024, we're going to actually just be able to put this stuff up on the screen, which is great because we're going to have a video thing going on. But that is something that 2023 has taught me, is just to step back. Megapixels, and not that I ever thought that megapixels were everything. I don't necessarily buy these high megapixel cameras to have insanely large files. I buy them because I shoot commercial photography where the clients need to crop a bunch of shit and they have like crazy ideas about what they want to do, and I never want to say no to them. And what is synonymous with high megapixel cameras usually is insane dynamic range, and that's really what I'm going after. If they could make smaller cameras with better dynamic range, I just get those. It's really the dynamic range I'm more interested in, unless it's a commercial project. So that is something that 2023 has given me that I feel good about. What are your thoughts on that? Or do you want to go into something else that you want to talk about and celebrate that you learned in 2023?
Well, that's a really good point because I'm on the opposite trajectory. I'm moving away from having shot on a 24 megapixel camera for the better part of 5 years, moving from my moving from my Nikon D750 to my Nikon Z6. I'm now getting to experiment and play around with many megapixels and many pixels, a lot of data with the new Z8. But moving to a more abstract theme that I got out of 2023, my fellow abstract thinkers and artistic minds will probably appreciate and understand this. I moved more towards something that I enjoyed was moving more towards intentions in the shoots. Now, I definitely have my fair share of shoots where I could have planned them better and I could have really taken a look at the model's capability better in tandem with the idea at hand. So I did grow in my last minute like ability to conjure ideas and just feeling it out in studio. However, I think I also planned better than in 2022. I think 2022 it was more I had a compelling idea and I kind of just threw it together assuming that it would work out, and whatever I got, and I didn't take as much accountability in for the end product. Whereas in 2023, if I did have a compelling idea, it was I didn't let it vanish into thin air and let it fall upon the tangibles that just I didn't plan for. The tangibles being, selecting the model. Does the model even have the chops for this? Did I write down the exact angle, the exact shot that I was planning to have for this? Or was I just bringing a bunch of props, bringing the model, getting to the location, kind of having a loose idea? I'll make it up as I go, but I have the resources, but I don't have the idea set. So one thing I think I did really well and improved upon was actually coming up with the idea, that idea that hits you in the shower and it's an inkling. It was the dream that was Rome. It's just a whisper, and taking that whisper, taking that idea that just flies into your head and actually sitting down and giving it the incubation period, giving it the time and the nourishment to bring it into a tangible line item checklist of idea with narrative, with purpose, with intention, and actually setting up a series, setting up a shoot. Where not only do the photos planned, not only do they stand alone as interesting and creative photos by themselves, but they also work together. Because something that a lot of photographers fuck up often is they do one of two things. They either create cool photos that like stand alone, but when you throw them together, they make no sense. They're almost like you can't have a series. Or they take shots that only work in a series, and when you put them alone by themselves, they make no sense. They're boring, or they're subpar. So one thing I think I did that I did improve upon was having an idea, letting it mature, writing it out, and then executing it the way that it actually occurred in my head.
I have to say that I think I share that same victory with you, because if I reflect back on my 2023, I feel like I've kind of hit that same tier. I feel like my work has moved up a tier when I'm super intentional with it. And I'm not talking about like just a test where I go out in the street or something like that, although I do feel like I'm getting better at that. But I feel like in 2022, I was wrapped up more in camera settings and things like that. And I feel like I know my equipment a little bit better, to where my mental bandwidth has now freed up a little bit more, and I can focus a little bit more on what was I trying to accomplish here. And the idea of letting something mature also, that really resonates with me, because I have ideas. Like I am, if there's one victory I give myself over the years, is I've become more patient. I am historically an impatient person, and the second I have an idea, I impulsively act on it. I'm like, let's go do it. I have shoots I've been sandbagging for 2 years now because the right scenario has not presented itself. There are very elaborate shoots I have in my head, and I haven't come across the right makeup artist for it, or the right stylist, or even the right model. There are some shoots I have completely planned out. I'm just waiting for the events to happen. Like I'm waiting for a building to be blown up. And I've been waiting for 2 years for that building to blow up. And I want to do a shoot in front of a building that is blowing up. And I know this building is going to be blown up one day. Or of course, I'm going to get fucked and I'm going to use a wrecking ball on it.
I just want to interject. I have the same shoot. I want to get a girl in a pink dress in front of a demo and just high speed shutter. Just and that, yeah.
I'm going to do, so I have my shoot planned. It's going to be telephoto lens because it compresses and it brings the building closer over her shoulder. I'm going to shoot super stop down. If it's a middle of the day, I'm going to shoot it like f11 because I want everything to be in focus, maybe even f13. I have it all figured out. I even have the vantage points figured out. But to your point, it's about letting ideas mature. There's other ideas I have that I want to do, and the pieces haven't come together yet. So rather than compromising, I'm like, no. Sit and wait for the right opportunity. I have a shoot I want to do with Malika, who was a guest in here, back a few months ago. She was on episode, where was it? Episode 32. We talked with Malika, and I have a shoot I want to do with a Mark V Navy diving helmet, and I want to line the inside of it with LED lights and do a sunset shoot. And I know exactly where I want it to happen. I know exactly where the sun's going to be. I have everything all figured out. I'm just trying to grind people on eBay for diving helmets because they're so expensive. Even the replicas, like, so a real Mark V diving helmet's like $15,000. A replica you can get for about $200. And so I'm just like making like really like lowball offers to see if someone will. And of course I have to like ask them like, hey, can I actually put somebody's head in here? Is it like filled in? And some guys are like, oh yeah, there's like screws sticking out the top and all that. And it's like, okay, well, I'll have to like figure out a way to pad it and all that. But I have a really cool elaborate shoot that I have, and I have a BCD as well that I'm going to put on the model. And she's going to be kind of in like an Ursula Andress vibe with a fucking like diving knife and everything. It's going to be cool. I have it all figured out. Just got to execute it. You got to sit on those and let them mature.
You really do, and it's crazy how much a shoot will change over time, just by virtue of living life and letting new ideas populate. I've got this one shoot I'm doing here pretty soon in January 7th, and I think it's gonna really set the intention for 2024. And I don't mean to sound like a spiritual guru by saying setting the intention, because being in Austin, you kind of just run into that if you have any yoga studio nearby. But in any case, it's a chainmail shoot. I'll be shooting it exclusively on film. It's going to be a really gaunt female model and nothing but chainmail. And I've ordered 7 packs of extremely large, like 2.5, 3 foot pink balloons. And
okay.
Yeah.
Go on.
And, well, this is how I'm diving into color, because like I want to do color the way I want to do color, and so I want to do an extremely cinematic, soft light shot of this girl in chainmail surrounded by these matte balloons with very low luster, and just playing around with that, doing wide shots, doing close-ups, the juxtaposition of texture, the juxtaposition of color, even the juxtaposition of mood and tone. Chainmail is a very severe, it's a very coarse, dark ages connotative piece, and balloons are celebratory. They're happy. They're lightweight, usually for birthday parties and engagements. So I hear you, and this is a shoot that I've had in my mind for about 1.5 years, and it's finally just come to fruition, and I'm doing everything in my power to make sure that I take accountability for possible contingency, and I don't leave anything out of my control, because contingency is going to happen, and if there's anything out of my control, it will only exacerbate it.
There's no doubt in my mind it's going to be an awesome shoot. It's going to look amazing, but I have to interject with comedy because it is my God-given duty to bust your balls. Yeah. I think what you should have her do. I think what you should do is you should like get a cast iron skillet and cook up some fish in it, and then don't clean it. And then when you do the shoot, when you're done, toward the end of the shoot, you could have her use her chainmail to, clean your cast iron skillet, and then you should take pictures of it. Brandon's just like, that was not what I was expecting you to say.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, and this is what I'm talking about, is the chainmail is really, really shiny. I don't want it to be shiny. So I could take the oil from the cooked fish and just rub it on the chainmail to give it more of a texture that I'm looking for.
I don't think she's wearing that shit if it smells like fish.
Well, I'm not going to say what I want.
What's it like shooting with Brandon? I smell like cod. Really rotten cod that's been cooked.
There's a joke in there, and I can't.
Do not make the joke. Do not get canceled, sir.
I cannot say it.
All right, we're going to talk about our final things that we are happy about, grateful for in 2023. I'm going to talk about my thing that I'm most grateful for, my sappy ass monologue, which is I am grateful for this pod. So I think the best thing that I probably did in 2023 is to do this pod, because my YouTube channel, I have to be kind of straight and narrow. I have to be kind of, I don't want to say a caricature of myself, but I have to keep myself in check on YouTube, because YouTube has flags and you don't want to offend people. It's more of a PG-13 type of place. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's avenues for that. And there's people that you can reach that you can hopefully enrich their lives with your work. And then, of course, there's revenue that comes back the other way, which is great. However, I like being unfiltered. And so if you are just catching this pod, you didn't catch our very original pod, our very first pod where we introduce ourselves and, here's our hosts, we interviewed each other and all that. This whole pod started over drinks. A mutual friend of ours, Raphael, who was also a guest on this pod, he came back in June. And that was episode number, because I like to plug us. That was actually episode number, where is that? There it is, 18. So Raphael was like, hey, us three people should go get drinks. And then he's like, I'm canceling. So you and Brandon should just go get drinks. And we were mutual admirers of each other's work on Instagram. So, of course, me being the gear dork I am, brought a 7mm fisheye with me that I was testing out for something. And I still have a really awesome shot of Brandon, a video shot of him picking up his beer with it. But anyway, we hit it off, and that was like late November, early December. So within a month and a half of that, we were already starting a podcast. Like, that's how quick it was. And we also did a collaborative YouTube episode. So chemistry was good. That to me is the coolest thing I think that I've done in 2023 was do this pod, because it allows me to express a side of myself that I don't get to express on YouTube. YouTube's where I'm very technical. I talk about my equipment and I mind I dot my I's and cross my T's, and I watch my language. Here I can say, fuck you, and it doesn't matter. So
that's absolutely true. And that's really interesting, because now that you say that, I think this podcast is something that I've taken for granted, and I haven't really thought so much. I haven't thought of it as a photography thing. I've thought of it more as like just another outlet, just like, another thing, to keep up with in a sense. And I know that's not, I know, we're unfiltered here, Kevin. I can tell the truth, but no, this podcast has taught me a lot. And when we came on the podcast, when we started the podcast, I think I was more unfiltered. Now I am not unfiltered on this podcast. Unfiltered is me at 14 years old playing Call of Duty. That's unfiltered. That's like neighbors calling the cops. But here, this podcast has taught me a lot. It's taught me how to talk about my ideas, talk about, what I think about photography. It's also helped me build a relationship with you, Kevin, and that's very important, because we think about photography very differently. And you have a lot more experience with photography than I do. You've got a lot more experience in business and just worldviews and life than I do. And I think when we started the podcast, I was more arrogant and more egotistical and more just like, oh, well, I'm a photographer in my own right. Like, I do things differently. Like, I have different ideas. Like fuck you. Like, because there were we definitely had moments in the early onset of the podcast where I perceived it as somewhat like one-upmanship. And so me being younger, I think I still have a streak of that arrogance. I'm less patient. I'm more ego driven.
I was that way.
Yeah. And
I was that way in my 20s.
Yeah, and so I think being on this podcast has taught me patience, and not only that is just throughout the year, Kevin has been an incredible mentor to me photographically. I've had a lot of unanswered questions, and it's given me the ability to explore photography outside of my ego, outside of my arrogance, and to kind of like really get to the nature of things. Kevin will always answer me when I have questions. It's almost terrifying how quickly he responds on Instagram at any time of day, bar like 5 a.m. Kevin like usually responds within about 2 minutes. Like, dude is constantly on his grind. And
I have Instagram. I have several windows, and Instagram's usually like my messenger's open on the right as I edit. If I'm not watching a sporting event or something, like I'm watching a Tottenham match or Dallas Mavericks game, if I'm not doing that, I have Instagram open. And so like I'll just see something pop up and I just click over, hit tab, and then respond and hit enter and tab back over to my edit.
Yeah. I can only assume as much. But being on the podcast is really opened up my ideas, and it's really given me patience and help give me a presence speaking to an audience. Whereas beforehand, I don't really have that presence, because being a photographer, working all the time, I don't interact with people. I'm not like always out, with groups of people talking. So it's helped me build a skill in reaching others, and giving me more of a spirit of helping others, supporting others, and growing as a person. As silly as that sounds, but it's the simple truth. And so I'm really looking forward to the future of the podcast. I feel like we're in a spot now where, there's so much to talk about. There's so much to do. We're switching over to a video format. And I don't want to like foreshadow too much into 2024. I'm kind of just adding to Kevin's point about the podcast here, but it's been a very, very effective tool and a means of maturity for me.
Well, I used to listen to this really awesome radio station in Dallas called 1310 The Ticket, and it's, like, where are you going with this, Kevin? But one of the reasons why that radio station, like, blew up was because the on-air personalities, like, everything was so organic, and there were inside jokes that just snowballed over the years. And so, like, it got to the point where, like, the whole station was like this big inside joke. If you were a listener, you were in on the joke. If you weren't a listener, you wouldn't know what the fuck was going on in the station. And that was what made it so cool. But the reason why that station was so successful is because it's so well invited. It invited everybody into those personalities. And that actually plays off of Howard Stern. One of the reasons why Howard Stern got so big is because he actually brought his personal life into his radio. And that reason why that show, that station did so well is because it brought everybody's personalities to the forefront. So, and then there were dynamics that work. So like on this pod, our dynamic that works is that I challenge you with experience and technical knowledge, but you'll challenge me because I'm set in my ways because of how long I've been doing things, but you'll have these new, fresh ways of doing things that challenge me. And so it's a good dynamic. I think that the age difference actually works. I think that if we were the same age, the podcast would be more boring. There wouldn't be a diverse way of approaching it. It would just be like, oh yeah, I'm into what you're into. That's cool. And it's like there has to be a little bit of oil and water for things to happen. And like one of the ways you challenge me is do more with less. Like put your gear aside and just come up with a really good idea and then capture it. And, I just talked about it earlier in the episode. I used a very inexpensive camera and took a really good portrait of a model who's had tons of great portraits taken of her. And she immediately was like, that's the one. I'm like, cool. I did it with a fucking Costco camera.
Dude, the photos you've been taking of Victoria this year are literally just like so refined. Like you can see all the intention.
You're talking about Bioko?
Bioko, yeah.
Okay, I work with
there's
three.
like 7 Victorias.
I work with so many Victorias.
There's a lot of Victorias.
Yeah. I've been pulling back on saturation. So like we're talking about color grading. I've been pulling back my color grading. I used to be like Canon commercial guy, bright colors. That's where I started. And when I shoot commercial stuff, I still tend to use Canon in that way. But when I go Fuji, it's like, let's go. Like let's just see how artsy we can make the colors. And Eterna bleach bypass. Like I said, when we go to WPPI in March, I'm gonna like have you shoot with my GFX, and I want you to mess with like some of their desaturated colors. I think you're gonna have a field day with it if you can get it in focus.
Eterna bleach bypass sounds like something a housewife in Beverly Hills gets done once a month.
I laugh. I have a very similar laugh about that when I see the name. I'm like, of all the fucking names, I don't know if it's a Japanese translation to English. Oh, Eterna bleach bypass. I'm like, what the fuck does that even mean? I mean, I know what Eterna is. It's a film stock. Bleach bypass means that it's got a little bit. I know what it means, but it's just like, yeah, you could come up with maybe a better name.
Yeah, you don't want to say that outside of the podcast to regular people. They'll get upset.
Yes. Well, coming up, if you know Brandon and Kevin, we have to get negative sometimes. So coming up, we're going to talk about what we did not like about 2023.
This is Andy Pham, and you're listening to the F11 Photography Podcast.
I put in all the greatest sound effects, so when we come back from break, Brandon's like, what the fuck was that?
Yeah, I'm not used to that.
So, yeah. I did one for Chris Woodman that was like, I don't even remember what it was. It was like birds. I don't even remember what it was. We played the Chris Woodman drop a couple episodes ago, and you were laughing coming out of break. So I know I'm doing something right. But, all right, it's time to talk some shit.
About ourselves or about other people.
I'm gonna mix it with talking shit about things that I didn't get done in 2023 that I wish I got done. I'm gonna talk shit about some gear too because, I want the world to know that I'm not just some ass kisser on YouTube who like gives everything a positive review. As a matter of fact, there is a piece of gear that I didn't even review because I just didn't see the point of putting through the effort. So I'm gonna start with that. When I was at WPPI this year, I saw two products that stood out to me. One was the Stella Pro Reflex S, which positively stood out to me, so much in fact that I bought two of them because when I was out in Dallas, the gentleman who assisted me, Bill, he let me borrow his Stellas, and I mean, dude, they are cool lights. So anyway, we're gonna get negative on it though. I'll talk about the Stellas maybe in our next episode. But Bill, if you're listening, shout out. I appreciate that. The Stellas are great. But then there's another light that is made called the Rotolight. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Rotolight. But
I'm not.
Okay, so what it is the Rotolight is like this. They make like two versions of the light. They make one called a Neo, which is about the size of a softball. And then they make one called the EOS 2, which I'm burping, which is called the EOS 2, and it's about the size of like a volleyball. Okay? So they're quote unquote video lights. And, their marketing is so aggressive, like if you, my computer is probably like recording my voice right now, just saying Rotolight. And when I get home, I'm gonna get like bombarded with their advertisements. So they're super aggressive. They started off as a Kickstarter, and I'm talking shit about it, but I also want to say that there are some cool things about it. So the concept is, it's an RGBW video light. Okay.
Yep.
In two different sizes, and it's bright enough to do video. And if you need to take a shot with it, it'll double its power as a strobe. And you can shoot it 30 frames per second as a strobe. And you can fire off 20,000 shots in a row with it because it's not using that much power. But that's the point. It's not using that much power. So when you watch the videos for it, everything's being done at night. And at best, it's being done at dusk. And it's never really being done during the day. But they have these ambassadors who just pump the shit out of it. And like the CEO, I forget the guy's name, but he's just he's it's a beatdown to watch the videos because it's like, I need to learn more about these. And the CEO does like all the videos, and he's like, we added this great new feature. We added tint. It's like every fucking video light has tint. Oh wow, I can shift magenta and green. My $100 newer lights have tint in them, but he like makes it. He makes it kind of. It reminds me of Apple, where it's like Apple's like, guys, we added a 1/8" jack to our MacBook Pros. We're revolutionary. Yeah. Like they do that, and it's like, dude. But here's the reason why it's a joke. Okay, they added tints to their lights. Well, I just told you about, hey, a newer light. You can get a nice video light from Newer for $100, $200, right?
Yep.
Their lights are like $1,500. And they're not even like waterproof. They're not even IP rated. At least the Stellas are IP rated. Now, it is cool that you can flash a color. Like you can flash a gel. Like you can just go in and dial in a gel and flash it. And that's great if your scene is dark enough. But it's just like there's other things I have problems with the light too, which is the fundamental design of the light. So every light that you own, they're all the same in one way, and that is that at the very end of the light, they all get to a very small size, whether it's a Bowens mount or a Profoto mount or whatever, because they have to get to a small enough size to utilize the physics of a modifier for the modifier to do its job. Well, the problem with rotolights, the fact that they're the size of softballs, and the fact that they're the size of volleyballs, if you take a light that's the size of a volleyball that's on a yoke and try to put it in a softbox, think about where you're going to have to move it forward. So you're not even going to utilize like the back 2/3 of a softbox, which is why they have to make their own proprietary softbox. It's like $400 for it. And then they have this insane bracket that's like super cumbersome, and you got to move it forward. And so it's like, it's trying to be too many things. And there's just other things that annoy the shit out of me. Like, we have 1,500 color gel options. It's like, I don't need 1,500 color gel options. If I were to go through every single one of those color gels once and spent 10 seconds deciding if I liked the gel or not, I would take an entire 8-hour day of my life just to look at those gels once and go, well, I like that one. Like, just like what they should do, like this is what the smarter companies are doing, like Pixel and Newer, is they have a feature where with your phone, like you're wearing an olive North Face shirt right now. I can literally just take my phone with their app and snap a picture of your olive North Face shirt, and my fucking lights will turn olive. And, if you're buying an RGB light where it's like, oh, I'm doing like a high school dance. It's like, cool, I want to get the school colors for my lights. We'll just go find like a big mural on the side of their gymnasium and take pictures of the fucking colors. Now your light's the same colors as their school colors. Like, you could do it that way and then like have like your top 50 gels, like the most used gels. Like, oh, it's a rose gel. It's an amber gel, or bastard amber is one of them. Like, they have all these different names that are very common gels. Anyway, point being is, for the price that you paid for the product. Now, I will say that the product does put out quality light. As a matter of fact, if you go to my Instagram, my pinned shot of me on Instagram is a black and white shot I took with the Roto AOS 2, the Roto Light AOS 2. It's a good light. But my point being is, it was such a disappointing product that I just didn't even do a review of it, because it's just, I don't know. And then there's... I have to say one more thing about the CEO, because he's like super insufferable. He's like, we have cutting edge technology. We share a building with an aerospace company. I'm like, you share a building with an aerospace company? Like, my wife works as an enrollment counselor for a college, and her college shares a building with the FBI. So what the fuck does that even mean? Does that mean that she can like go investigate like investigate stuff because she shares a building with the FBI? Like, we share a building with an aerospace company. It's like, are you making your lights fly? Like, I don't like, it's weird. Like, their marketing is just so confusing. It's like, just make the light brighter. And that's the big Achilles heel, is the light. This $1,500 light, when it flashes, is about 1/5 the power of a speed light. And speed lights are about 1/5 the power of strobes. So you are like, you're going to have to shoot at f1.4 and like ISO 400. And yeah, like that's like, I sometimes I like to shoot outside at f1.4, but if I want to shoot in my studio, I don't want to shoot at my studio in f1.4. Like, and I tried those lights out. So I did this shoot with Sophia. And this is what made me decide to not do the review on this light, which was, I did the shoot with Sophia. I think I had my ISO at like 800-ish. I had my aperture at like 1.4. And even then the shots were like 1 or 2 stops underexposed, because she was like 2 meters away from the modifiers. And so I was just like, man, this is just not a good product. So that's my shit talk. One thing I was disappointed in with 2023, they put in a bunch of effort on a light, 2 lights actually, and I ended up not doing a review on them. So I'll get into more philosophical things that I wasn't happy about in 2023, but I want to kick it over to you. I want you to tell me about one of your biggest disappointments of 2023.
One of my biggest disappointments in 2023, and this is kind of intangible, kind of not. It's like a two-step thing, twofold thing. Is we released on one of the former episodes that I went to New York, and my experience in New York was it was interesting. While I had a great rapport with the people I work with, and I went there to shoot with an agency, do a bunch of tests, and then do my own personal work. New York was something where I planned ahead many weeks in advance to shoot with upwards of 6 to 8 models, and booked everything ahead of time. And during my time in New York, half the models that I was meant to shoot there got in touch with me within 20 minutes after I'd arrived at the studio, and said like, hey, I didn't know we were shooting today. I'll be there in 50 minutes, or I'll be there in an hour and a half or 2 hours, because like, like I just had to ask off work, or like they'd say like, oh my gosh, like I just had to like call in, or
because it's so expensive. They have like 4 jobs. Exactly.
So I'm over, like I had this planned out 3 weeks in advance. I'm expecting everything to go the way it's meant to go. Like me being me, I'm into like dopamine cycles. I'm into like, the circadian rhythm. I'm into like water. I'm into like, I know how carbs are going to affect me. I know how protein's going to affect me. That's just, I find that interesting. So, and other people might not give a shit about this, but like I had planned my meals. I planned my water intake. I planned my caffeine intake. I planned my L-theanine and my alpha GPC intake and everything to optimize, like, so that I had a strong start with the shoot. And then as we eased in, as I became more hungry, had less caffeine in my system, I had all my important stuff taken care of, as all my supplements and my, everything was taken care of. So I had planned ahead all of these things, and I knew that when my meals were going to be, and day after day after day after day of me waking up at 5:30 a.m. to get to the studio on time for sunrise and everything like that. All these shoots ended up going later, and like it was just chaos. And so me thinking I'm doing my due diligence 3 weeks in advance, making sure everything's taken care of, making sure I know what the hell's going on, where the sun's going to be, if it's a location style shoot. That it just right out the window. It was improvisation city, day after day, getting no sleep in the shitty Airbnb that I was staying in. And well, I think I did a good job despite that.
Sorry, I'm laughing at your Airbnb because it was like basically like you were on a fucking battle cruiser in the middle of the Pacific and you had like 6 people stacked on top of you. I wouldn't be surprised if there were like chickens or roosters running around there.
That's what it felt like. And like there at one point I was sleeping in a bunk bed with the owner and he's like, yeah, I work night shift, so I'll be getting in at like whatever. And I'm just like, okay, whatever, fuck it. It's just like one more thing added to this experience. And so that was something I was incredibly disappointed in. And it's not like I don't want to talk shit about other people, but obviously that's, that's not professional. That's wildly off the par of expectation. But it taught me a lot, and it taught me another thing. Working with these models who were very tremendous, and I know I'm going in a positive direction here, but trust me, it'll turn negative. Working with these models, they were so good. They were so like, even though they didn't get the information they needed, they were extremely professional on the dot. Like once they were like activated and knew what was happening, it was like, oh, like even though they're 20, 21, 22, 23, like it's like working with professionals after the fact. They were very put together. Their modeling was absolutely insane. Their attitudes were fantastic, very amicable, very like, I'm here to get shit done. And in contrast, working with a lot of the models, whether in agency or not in an agency here in Texas, you see far less of that. And obviously, I'm not like naming any names. This is just a very, very general thing. I think it's a cultural thing. Texas moves slower. Going to New York for that week and just absolutely grinding and hustling with other people who are grinding and hustling and just being in that culture, just diving right in. It just made me aware of just how much activation energy you have to expend for a product that is just noticeably, significantly less great in Texas based on what we have to work with. And so it kind of pissed me off coming back to Texas, and it kind of like turned me off of shooting for a bit when I got back, because in my mind, I'm like, okay, like I can't change what's around me. I can only compensate and exercise more control and deliberation in my shoots to make up for that. And like, it kind of like gave me this idea that like, okay, if someone's not responsive, if they're dragging their feet, if they don't give a fuck about the shoot, and if they like, if you can just tell in conversation and in text with them leading up that this is just them rubbing one out, I don't even want to be involved. And like, I don't, like, it's a waste of my time. I used to put up with it and I used to care. I used to not like notice that as much before New York, because I was just like, oh, because everyone, a lot of people are that way. And that's just kind of the expectation that, that people are just going to like drag their feet, and you kind of have to like will them into the shoot, and you don't like it, but you don't notice it as much. Upon coming back from New York, I noticed it, and I was just like, okay, this isn't worth my time. I'm the one planning everything. I'm the one buying the props. I'm the one doing everything and managing this. I don't even want to know if you're going to drag your feet.
Yeah, I've that has opened up my eyes. Your experience in New York has kind of made me reflect and open up my eyes more to who's reaching out to me and what their intentions are, because I do feel like sometimes people are just like, I just want to post really good pictures of myself. And it's like, that's not why I do this. I want to do something way at a higher tier than that. Like, I want people who are at way higher tiers to look at the pictures and go, that's high tier, not, oh, that's just some chick on fucking Instagram who wants some shots of herself, to make a post and hashtag whatever the fuck. And they're usually like Parade or some other brand that they bring to the shoot.
Well, yeah, and the thing as well with Instagram is things have become very crystal clear after the release of Threads. Now, I'm not saying that Threads is the place that photographers should post their photos. I'm not saying that traction there is anything significant. I think Threads is a great place for conversation. It's a great place of sharing. It's a great place of trading off tidbits of advice, knowledge, and insight that you might not have had. It's not super deep, but that's kind of what I'm getting from it. In contrast, I'm noticing that Instagram is it's dead for photographers. Now, what do I mean by that? Is If you like, in order to be a photographer and have a worthwhile on Instagram, you have to put in the X amount of hours to then video edit and to then keep up a consistent reel schedule, because the algorithm picks up on consistency. Now, that's not to say that photography's dead on Instagram in that way. It just basically means, like, if you have X amount of hours and your work is good enough for Instagram, like not good enough for magazine covers, but good enough for Instagram, where you can make a video and make that successful, and you're more of an influencer photographer, you're more of a let's collaborate on this kind of photographer, and that works for you. That's what gets you by. That's what you like. You want to do brand deals because you're more of an influencer and stuff like that. Fair enough. I don't have the time for that. I don't care about that. Instagram notoriety doesn't do anything for me. I don't want to be a face on Instagram. I don't care. But I do know that if I want to do that, it's not going to be by posting photos. I post photos on Instagram, only my best work. I don't even post my B work. I don't even post my B to A work anymore. I post my best shot or two from the set, and that is it. Because the only utilization, the only thing I get from Instagram, because I don't get likes anymore. I don't think anyone gets likes anymore on Instagram. That's not even a thing.
No, I don't. I don't. Like, it is like, this would be the number one thing I want to talk about, is that social media in general for photography, stills photography, is like,
it's over.
It's over. Yeah.
Like, there's
that's
nothing.
my biggest disappointment of 2023, but continue on. I interrupted you.
So like, I post on Instagram because Instagram in a lot of ways is still a very viable showcase for your work, for brands, for other photographers, for models, and then some. And then also saying that I don't want to schedule a shoot on Instagram anymore, and I'm moving away from that. All my shoots that I'm scheduling actually coming up, we've gone to text. We've gone to group chats and texts. I don't I don't want to have to open Instagram and get bombarded with reels of someone cooking oats in the mountains in the Pacific Northwest with a perfect fucking grade. That's awesome. It's not for me anymore. It's such a waste of dopamine. It's a waste of time. So one thing that's been massively disappointing is, and it's kind of helped clarify a lot of things, because if people are reaching out to you on Instagram, it's, you can kind of filter very quickly who they are and what they're about based on their photos. And there is an overwhelming amount of people in Austin who are they're just like the dopamine. They're dopamine models. You can tell they're not going anywhere. And we've had this conversation on our New York episode. I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but what I'm saying is I shoot strictly for two reasons now. And one reason is, does it add to my book in a way that will make me attractive for agencies? And two, does it look attractive for brands? And is it different? Is it an idea that exists on its own? I don't want it to be an extension of my work like I did in 2023, where it's black and white. Oh, I'm the black and white guy. I'm going to take photos because that's what I do. If I have a compelling idea and it needs to be in black and white, and that's the place that it lives, is the only place that it lives, fair enough. But I don't want to keep shooting because it's a habitual thing, and I'm just developing this ongoing story on Instagram, almost like on autopilot shooting, autopilot creating. I'm very happy to move away from that, and Instagram, in a way, and it's just inherent shittiness in 2023 has actually clarified a lot of that for me.
Well, Instagram has basically completed its transformation into TikTok, because I find myself just watching golden retriever videos on there now, and I'm like, wait a minute, I don't use this platform for that. I don't like TikTok, really. I go on there to find photography, and I start watching golden retriever videos, and I'm like, when did this fucking happen? And then I go over to Threads.
I'm going to interject real quick, just real quick.
No, go ahead.
They don't even push other people's photography to me anymore.
No.
I don't see my community. I haven't seen my community in months. I see magazines, brands, and influencers. That's all that they push to me. I don't see the community.
I have to consciously think about somebody and then go look them up. And that's it. Like, I've missed a couple of your posts, and we interact all the time, which should be tickling that algorithm. But like, maybe this is all part of the design. I will go find people who I follow and like their stuff, just to not necessarily to remind them that I exist. I'm more reminding them that I remember that they exist, and I'm going out there and appreciating their work. But man, it is hard to navigate through that anymore. And Threads, unfortunately, doesn't know what it wants to be because it wants to be like this hybrid between Instagram and Twitter, and it's kind of not sure. Like, it's so in its infancy. It may work out, it may not work out. I have a Threads account. I go on there every now and then. Sometimes I'll post something and it'll get 1 like, and sometimes I'll post something and it'll get 180 likes just randomly with a ton of shares. I don't know what not that I'm trying to outsmart the algorithm, but the whole reason why we post our stuff online is for people to see that the venues that you are posting your stuff in do not push your work to those people, then what's the fucking point? And that's one of the reasons why I have the most success on YouTube, because I feel like the people who go to YouTube, they want to sit there and watch something for a while. That's what they're there for. They want to do with golden retriever videos, like what I do with golden retriever videos, they want it to be a photography video. And really, YouTube is the only place where I can just sit down and talk about a photo for 4 or 5 minutes. And, whether it's from a technical or an artistic standpoint, and people will just pay attention. Like in Instagram, okay, let's say you get 500 likes on a post. How many of those people spent more than 2 seconds looking at your post? They're just they're sitting on the shitter scrolling. They see your thing and they hit the heart button and they scroll the next thing. Like that's as much attention as they are paying to your work.
Yeah, and I lost my train of thought, but but yeah, no. More to your point is it's really not a dopamine thing, and I think part of the travesty is that a lot of photographers take their work seriously. And so here's the gap that's been created with the downfall of Instagram and the invention of Threads. Is Instagram used to be a vehicle. It used to be a vehicle that kind of like floated below. It bridged the gap between not being known and then being picked up by major companies. It was a vehicle for that. You could post phenomenal work. You could be a niche photographer who developed himself over years, and you have your own style, and basically you would get rewarded for that with persistence and tenacity by being picked up. That's how Jack Bridgeland, who recently shot Robert Patterson for GQ.
Spider-Man?
No.
Who is that?
Oh my God.
I don't know any of the young kids anymore. I'm fucking old.
He was Twilight.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I know him. Yeah, he got Vampire with Sparkles.
Exactly. So Jack Bridgeland went on and did a seminar about how he got picked up on Instagram because he developed a really great niche in his photography, in his style, and just ran with it. He just took it to the full extent. That, I think, is dead. That used to bridge the gap because there was a long distance from the bottom to GQ magazine, and Instagram used to fill that distance. You get good on Instagram, suddenly you get picked up by brands. People start seeing you by virtue of spread, by virtue of views and algo pushes. Those algo pushes aren't happening anymore. So if you want that algo push to happen, if you want to bridge that gap to the high brands without doing the traditional sales work, without doing the traditional networking and a lot of sweat equity into your work, you could just do the video thing, do the Reels thing, and bridge that gap that way, and your work would have to be phenomenal. And you're almost doubling the time you're spending on your craft specifically to make 7-second clips that hopefully an algorithm pushes for you. That is incredibly depressing. And it's not viable for people who are working jobs. If you're 17 and you want to be a photographer, and you've got all this free time, you're making like 24 grand a year and whatever, and like Instagram's kind of just the thing you spend your time on, fair enough. But for a lot of photographers, it's the sweat equity that's going to get them there now.
I only have one word for that. Bane.
Yeah, dude.
For real, man. So I think the summary, because we started off positive and we went negative, and I'm going to turn this back around to a positive, and that, of course, is the theme of our show, which is chase light and not algorithms, and
Merry Christmas.
That's right.
That was nice. That was a good touch.
That does it for today's episode. We wish you and your family, whatever you celebrate, happy holidays. I don't want to get canceled. Merry Christmas, happy Hanukkah, happy Kwanzaa, happy winter solstice for all you pagans out there. We wish you all a happy holidays from the F11 podcast. You can check us out at f11pod.com. We are on Threads. Wait, we aren't on Threads. We'll get on Threads maybe one day. We are on Instagram at F11pod. And until next time, kids, chase light and not algorithms.
Thank you for listening to today's episode.
For more information about this podcast, go to www.f11pod.com.